Okay, hello everyone. This is Phuc. Thank you very much for having me. Debian conference has always been a very fun experience for me. And as you can see behind me is a bag that I got from the event in 2018. A little bit about myself. Um, I started to engage in the open source, free and open source software community about 13 years ago. And now I see myself as an advocate for force movement. I started Force Asia organization in 2009, and I currently serve as on the board of the Open Source Initiative. Yeah. With DBN, I actually have like very personal connection with the DBN project because of a few DBN developers had become my very, very close friends during the past few years. Some of them are on the call today. You know who you are. So this is going to be a BOF discussion. So not a presentation, so I don't have any slide. I want to talk today about social equality and free software. I heard some background noise. Let me see if I can.
Maybe also switch off your mic.
Yes.
Chatan, okay, yeah, Chatan, yes.
Yeah, so I have muted all the participants here in this call. When you want to speak, please turn on your microphone. Yeah. So the topic today is about social equality. So when we talk about equality, I could imagine a world of society where people have the same status in all the possible respects in life, including civil rights, freedom of speech, equal access to education, to healthcare, to opportunities. And why is it important that we talk about this topic today? Given what's happening around the world, COVID-19, like it's sadly not everyone around the world have access to healthcare. And you know, the very simple term, social distancing, but is it possible for people elsewhere? I grew up in an extended family where different generations share the same home. So if not everyone in the world can have this privilege that you can have your private space and share private space to encounter to this matter. The good thing is free software has become a very popular phenomenon these days in the world. Companies are talking about it, governments are talking about it. So they also give funding and grants for different open source projects. But who are the people who can actually tap into these resources? You know, some people work very hard for the free software communities, still don't earn enough to survive, while companies make huge profits and big money. So what are kind of contribution they make back to the community? Another thing that I want to discuss, which is the movement around diversity and inclusive. Like being an Asian woman, I of course very appreciate this movement that give us like people from emerging country have the voice to speak up. But again, I see many examples where people really use this as a weapon to get their own gain their own advantage. And I want like us to be aware if all this matter. The power of the internet is great that more and more people get access to the internet. But also it has the power to destroy a person or the entire organization within a few hours if you only listen to what's going on in the public but don't dive deep into the whole background of the situation. So in the discussion today, of course, there's so many problems around the world that we want to, that need a solution, but specifically to this discussion, I want to talk about equality in the free software community. Like in the recent development in the Force Asia community, we also hear people, you know, often people unhappy because of certain access that they get and they contribute. And of course, we also see like many people, many long-term contributors, not only in our organization, but around the world leaving the community because they don't feel that they got a fair treatment. Yeah. So in this discussion, I invite many people from different parts of the world. They're gonna introduce themselves quickly, so we can at first raise awareness and see if we can work together to find not exactly a solution, but to establish conversation and to work together in our own organization and see if we can. Brainstorming as a start of new ideas to tackle this matter. Yeah, so I would like to give our participant here a chance to speak a little bit about themselves. What does equality mean to them, and why do they care about this topic? Yeah, so maybe Norbert, as you have your camera on, you can start. Introduce yourself, where you are, and why do you think that you care about this topic?
Okay, I'm Norbert Breining. I don't look like this, but I'm living in Japan, working in a completely Japanese company. This is my daughter who doesn't want to go to sleep. Since some years, I'm working also in the South Asia community. I'm highly active in the Japanese development community. And yeah, so to put equality for my point, I mean, I'm out of my common surroundings, right? As a white Caucasian, you are definitely the minority. Where I live, there's zero other from my country in the next 3 prefectures in the whole area here. It's the only one me. And so you're definitely out and in a minority. And for me, equality, like I have been in academia for like 20 years and in industry for quite a lot of years now and software. So equality for me is not giving people the same chances to prove themselves, but also to expect the same. So put it the other way around for myself. I mean, living here, for me, equality, I want to be treated the same way. I want to be in all respects, like fair treatment within the company, within the society, within everything. But I also expect from myself that I contribute in the same way as others. That meant like when I was at university, I was teaching in Japanese, contributing in the normal way like every other university professor. And in the same now in a company that's purely Japanese, I mean, everything has to be done like this. So, and I expect this in all, so not in my only surroundings, in my work surroundings, but also in the software development. Nobody should be given an extra advantage because of their background. This might be important for small kids, where you cannot be sure about the educational background. But what I want, if we start about software development, people have the right to get the same treatment, the same equal expectation of what can be done with them, but also they have to provide the same equal level of quality, support, background check, quality at the end. So this is my expectation and my what I ask from myself in the surroundings and what I would like to see in software development with respect to equality. Thanks.
Thank you, Norbert. Niharika, would you like to go next? You need to unmute yourself.
Okay. Are you able to hear me right? I could hear some disturbance here. Yeah, okay. Thank you. Thank you so much, ma'am. Hello, everyone. It's great to be in this meeting today. It was thanks to Hong ma'am. She invited me. And I am Niharika from India. Currently, I am a student who is not yet graduated due to should actually be graduated, who is not yet graduated. So I'm sitting at home currently speaking about the open source and how I see social equality as a perspective is that I come from a women's engineering institute, engineering college, which is exclusively for women minorities in India. And I first introduced myself to open source in the year 2018, and that too, how it started, I would like to tell you. It was during my engineering first year that I joined engineering because I was a hardware freak. I wanted to play with circuits, and for me, hardware was fun. Hardware and firmware and all these things. When I joined engineering and I took electronics and electrical as my major and took it because I had to do a lot in that. There were a lot of people in my friends circle, my relatives, or you say a lot of people who kept backstabbing that women not work in the field of hardware. Women choose software, they don't have any scope in the field of hardware, and it's very difficult for them when it comes to the settlement in life or afterlife that they see after education. It is not at all possible. You have taken the wrong decision. This was something that I kept hearing for almost 2 years of my engineering, and completely intolerable. Then, when I joined this institute, which was exclusively for women, this institute started helping me in developing myself as a woman, and also through this journey, I got myself introduced to open source hardware, open source software. Actually, free open source came into my life, and I started contributing to FOSS Asia too, and that is how my journey of open source started. And I saw that the field of open source hardware has very greatest opportunities out there in the country. And later on, I this is how I started telling the people who told me that women cannot work in hardware and has no scope, has actually seen me work and do a lot of things. I'm currently contributing to ARM, I'm contributing to trusted firmware, and this has all happened through the open source. So this is how my story and my journey through open source started.
Yeah, thank you, Niharika. So I think that we share a little bit of a similar experience. I also do believe that I got a lot of opportunities after I joined the community, especially access to education and amazing people in the community. So let's move on. Let me see who would like to start next. Roland, why don't you go?
Hi, I'm Roland Turner. I've been. Oh, is my microphone noisy? She's complaining. So I've been involved in open source for a long time. I believe I first used 386BSD and Linux back in about '92, and I've been involved in licensing and reasoning about licensing since the late '90s. Certainly, for example, the idea of the Mozilla public license permitting dual licensing under the GNU licenses was something I proposed as far back as '98. I'm part of the organizing team for the FOSS Asia Annual Open Technology Summit, which happens here in Singapore each March, at least so far. Hope we get to it next year. And my work is as a chief privacy officer for an analytics company. And that touches on this discussion in two ways. One, some of the use of our technology is to strengthen inclusivity in corporate settings. That is to help HR teams improve the involvement and engagement of minorities rather than simply their sort of token appearance in the organization. And the other is, as a chief privacy officer, I'm directly involved in applying human rights concerns to the use of software and processing in a commercial setting. This has some bearing on open source, which I'll be speaking about in a few weeks at State of the Source. But I had very short notice for today's session, so I have prepared nothing more concrete than that. So I'll hand back to Hong Phuc.
Thank you, Roland. So Roland now are based in Singapore, right? So let's move to a nearby region. I have Vishari on the call. Vishari, where are you?
Oh, hi. Working? Yes, okay. Hi, everyone. I'm Shari Muk. From Thailand. I have been part of open source communities probably at least probably since 1995 or so, advocating for the use of Linux and installing Linux and Samba and Senmail in a clandestine manner in enterprises, and developed various products and solutions in the open source technology, using open source technologies. Recently, being completely inspired by spending 2 decades in the open source movement, I have decided to adopt the open source way of education by homeschooling my children, as well as establish Coder Dojo Thailand, also a learning environment very much based on open source. I also organize Open Tech Summit Thailand, with Hong Phuc Mario and the Force Asia team, and I am an inner source coach, so to speak. So I adopt best practices from the open source world, and I apply that to corporate development teams. In regards to equality in open source, I see it as somewhat a double-edged sword, so to speak, or two sides of the coin, right? So myself, I owe my entire career, my entire existence to open source. Where would I be without great tools like Linux, Perl, Python, and whatnot? I mean, I can only imagine if I had to, for example, pay for software licenses for these tools, or being unable to modify them to suit my needs. It would have been a complete disaster. So I am very much um, also, being basically from Thailand, we don't have a very large open source community here, so to speak. But the global community has allowed me to access great resources, um, great people, allow me to have discussions, conversations, and learn from the best talent that probably the world has to offer. Right. And for that, I consider myself extremely lucky and extremely privileged. And but yet at the same time, we still have issues. For example, cultural, perhaps. Many Thai people, for example, don't speak English, and English is the main language of the open source world, which makes it at the present very difficult for people living in Thailand to access the open source community. There are also other issues such as shyness and inability to share. There are many people. I mean, I, for example, grew up being extremely introverted, right? And it took me a long time to get myself in a position where I can do things like this, where I can talk to you reasonably comfortably. But I noticed that for many developers, participating in the community is not how should I put it? Is not a comfortable experience, especially not face to face. I suppose that's why many people in open source prefer emails and chat, right? Um, The so that is one aspect of equality. But then I think on the other hand, if we talk about standard things like gender equality, I don't think that there is an issue there. Basically, because any gender can join in the open source movement, and you have generally the option of staying anonymous, right? If you stick to emails and chat, then you don't need to reveal your gender, or you can express it any way you want. And I think that for the most part, Thailand doesn't have that problem. However, it can be seen that the community here is quite, should I say, overrepresented by males. The other issue, I suppose, is access to resources, because participating in the open source community, if you are if you are not paid to do open source, requires free time, requires equipment, requires connectivity, which not everybody has. But that sort of so contrast that with me, who has always had computers, always had access to the internet. Those have enabled me the opportunity to participate in open source projects, up my skills, and gain the benefits from that. But for many people, they don't have computers, they don't have connectivity. Um, it makes it really difficult for them.
Yeah,
And
Miss Sari,
yeah,
yeah, thank you very much. I understand. What I hear from you is, for you, equalities mean access to education, access to tooling, but you also emphasize a few of challenges that we can ensure equality. So the challenges, space, and problem we're going to discuss in the next point of discussion. Yeah,
okay.
but thank you very much for giving us a heads up. So I see here in the call, I have a few people coming from Hong Kong. So now the Hong Kong's really in the news. What happening there? Always very curiosity of the people. Would you guys want to share a little bit about what's going on there? Who would like to start from the Hong Kong side?
Yeah, Holog first. Holog is in the front line. So,
Holog, yeah.
Hi, I'm Holog Chen. I represent a group of civic hackers and social activists in Hong Kong. We call our collective Station. Actually, the formation of Station was inspired by the Debian's maintenance team structure, that how do we equip people with decentralized ways. That's been something we've been exploring. Now we have around 200 people in the group, and the decentralization of the movement has been a major discussion or even controversy within the activism in Hong Kong for several years, until the 2019 anti-ELAB movement, which is known as the Water Movement. Then we have more solutions, or more familiarity to the idea of open sourcing and also crowdsourcing initiatives in the movement. So I guess my time, because this is not really a presentation session, so I won't dive into all the details. Rather, I would actually copy and paste some of the notes that I prepared into the notepad. That so you should be able to see my notes from the notepads now. And I think there are several things happening within the 2 years. First of all is, of course, the Be Water movement that put Hong Kong in the spotlight of the international community. We are cool again because open source has been, facing some obstacles in the past 2 decades. Our seniors have fight really hard to promote the idea, but for general public, they don't ring a bell, because they're really familiar with closed source and enterprise products, and many of them are also more comfortable with engaging to a vendor-customer relationship with every aspect of their lives. We are enslaved by this consumerism in every aspect of the society. But with the rise of social movement and democratic movement, more and more people realize that you can not rely on a already made products, because there's no already made democracy, right? You can't buy it from a supermarket. You have to build it from the ground. So this DIY spirit arising from social movement is also what made me engage. So in contrast with many of you who has been engineer, or your background might be, or the society that you were in already generally more open. For me, I have been a problem solver. I face a lot of problems in social movement, be it security, be it really hard to collaborate with other people. It's hard to build trust, and often it's really easy to be fragmentized by the government or by the establishment. That we have to start being creative. That we need to build ways that we can work together better. So once I heard that there is such thing that is called open source and open and crowdsourcing, I realized, wow, this is the direction that I and we together need to explore. So I actually go hunt down IT guys like Wan Leung I actually go to the cafes where IT people gather and ask, hey, do you know what open source? Can you teach me? Can you introduce me? And I want to be a part of you. That's how I learn more and more. And of course, later I realized open source is not a magic potion that solves all your problems. And in fact, it also faces some of its problem in itself. For example, you have to be explaining to the muggles a lot. And but that's how, like, I think in the past 5 years, I have been on this way of engaging with the IT community and those social activist community that I have been with. And in terms of concrete topics, I guess we will be more interested in how open source and free software play a role in the movement. Actually, I wrote an article for Civic Hall. I will send out later of listing all the technologies, but I would emphasize on the use of teleconferencing and live stream, which created a sense of togetherness and participation. In the past, we can only participate through joining an organization, but now we are seeing more and more point-to-point collaborations, and people, by just looking at the live stream, they feel that as if they are the one who were beaten by the patron of police, and they are there even though they're trapped in their office. And that really increases and mobilizes social movement, not just in Hong Kong, but worldwide. And another thing I would emphasize is the use of Telegram. It is widely used in Hong Kong with several historical points where because we don't have a universal suffrage, first of all, and we also don't have referendum. So in our law, we cannot have a general vote. So we have to also actually be breaking the law to have votes. And in 2014, there was a pseudo or de facto referendum that requires Telegram. That's why there are many people who installed Telegram. Even if they're housewives or middle-aged uncles who don't use computer at all. And that is one major point, getting the general people to install that app first. And that later down. Yes.
I want to put in here, so you are absolutely right, and I want to say thank you very much for all the notes that you paste into the Etherpad. You also touched on some of the solutions that we would like to hear, how to keep people connected online and engage newcomers. Very good, thank you very much. I would like to go back to that point a little bit later. I want to hear now from Raphael. Raphael actually based in Shenzhen, next to Hong Kong. And let's hear another perspective from somebody who actually lives in China. Raphael, are you there?
Hi, hello, I'm Raphael. I'm Raphael Lee. I'm a member from the local community called Shenzhen DIY. We are a maker community. We make softwares, hardwares, and a lot of interesting things. We even have a band. Back into the years in the university, I was interested in electronics. I built a lot of circuits using with the instruments that we have in the laboratory. But I felt the happiness of making things. After that, I chose my career as an electronics engineer. I design instruments for measuring different kinds of parameters for batteries and etc. And at that time, I started work as an embedded software engineer, since I need to program the MCUs to make a fully functional product. And back into that period, I used a lot of software which are not open source and not free. We use some versions of crack softwares, but to be frank, we do not have any choice. We use the crack software when we are in university. So then we will choose the software that we are familiar with. So we do not have any other choices. So and then there are some very luckily, I met the members of Shenzhen DIY there. I started to use Linux as my use Debian as my Linux distribution. And after several years, I abandoned the Windows as my daily computer. I use Linux always. So I think the free software really made a very great job, and I want to. I am already involved in the free and open source software movement. I'm already a developer. I make patches for the free software projects, and I'm a user, and I'm telling my friends that free software and open software they are very important. They are changing our lives. So that's a bit of my experience. I think the younger generations are more involved in free software. Naturally, for example, the front end and back end developers, they will program their software to run on Linux distributions, not Windows. The Windows server are much lesser than Linux servers. So naturally, they need to use a compiler, need to use the free front-end framework and backend softwares, backend servers. They are naturally free and open software. So the younger generations have the better opportunity to involved in the free and open software movement. I think the IT industry are more involved than any other traditional industries. For the traditional industries, for example, electronics and IC design are controlled by the big companies. The softwares are made by a small group of people and companies. They need to be charged for a lot of fees to use that software. And for recently, something happened to the Sino-American trade war, and that makes a lot of harm to both countries. I think using free and open software will solve that problem. And now, mainland China proposed the project called our own operating systems, which I think that Huawei will be a lot involved in that project. All the resources are going into Huawei in mainland China anyway. Maybe there are some open source software projects from them, but not much. Okay, that's a bit from my side.
Thank you, Raphael. It's super interesting to hear from you. We will continue in a little bit later. I see Eden. Eden, would you like to say a few words?
Hi, hello. I would like to make it brief because we don't have much time left. So I'm from Vietnam, and I've been contributing to Phuc Asia for like 10 years now. And because I'm in Vietnam, so I would like to follow up the discussion that Nishari just mentioned. There are actually two issues about social equality that I'm really concerned about. The first is the current issue of COVID-19 related to COVID-19. So, like in February, when the pandemic started to, spread all over the place, Vietnam decided to apply social distancing for 2 months. So around this time, all the schools were shut uh, or switched to online learning. But with online learning, the problem is many students in the mountainous area or in the small ethnic group, they don't have access to internet or they don't have a machine like PC or smartphone to in order to do online learning. So during that time, well, most of the students in the big city were able to resume their normal learning online. The students in the mountain, they were not able to continue their study, so they fell behind. And I want to see in this discussion, I'm not sure if we have time for this, but I want to hear from the speaker and other people how we can handle, how we can tackle this issue. This is the first thing. And the second thing is somehow related to, somehow similar to the situation in Hong Kong and China, like little bit political. Like 10 years ago, no matter what status that we have in the society, no matter how rich or poor we are, we would be excluded from any political decision making because just Vietnam only one party, they make all this decision themselves. But like recently when when technology changed the world, so thanks to open data and social media and free software, we were able to pressure put more pressure on the government. Uh, our voice, like they don't, I mean, our voice are not listened completely, but somehow we were able to raise our voice in little extent. But still, I know it's going to be a long journey until we can reach the freedom of speech, freedom of raising our voice like Taiwan or any other Asian country. So I want to see like how you do it. I want to like maybe closer to Vietnam is Thailand, and I want to hear from you guys on how we can change the situation in such country like in Vietnam. How we can do something like with open technology, open source. What can we do to improve this condition?
Thank you, Eden. So I just want to make a quick connection here when we talk about Southeast Asia, right? The situation in Vietnam and Thailand. We also have somebody here from Singapore who before worked for somewhat the government of Singapore. Like it's famous for a very established country where people get opportunities everywhere. So Kiwi, I want to hear from you. Is it really the case in Singapore that people get equal opportunity and access to education everywhere?
All right. Hi, my name is Kiwi from Singapore. So yeah, nice seeing you guys. I think a long time since we've seen each other. Okay. Like what Phuc say, yeah, Singapore could be kind of position itself, have a reputation of where is there's equality, whatnot, high standard of living. But in reality, I don't think that is 100% true. Just a bit of background. I've been as a civil servant for 20 years, close to 20 years, and decided to quit and then start my own business. So the entire genesis behind it is that I felt that in my 20 years of civil service experience, I do not think equality and civil service is compatible, so to speak. Different people may have different point of view, but I will just position myself as a much more critical individual that see equality and whatnot to be something a bit. I put on a more critical lens per se. to realize that the kind of system and structure that's put in place, I don't think that's only unique to Singapore. I'm quite sure this happens everywhere in the world. To how to really bring what we try to discuss here, equality, equal opportunity, to your fellow people in the country. So as a result, I quit my job. We started this company called Lions Forge. I will say that it's more like a social experiment. The whole idea of that experiment is about how someone without any form of technical knowledge or business experience can kind of make use of the tools that's around at that time back, I will say that back in 2017, and then start a business that can compete against the mainstream corporation. So in this case, for Lions Forge, what we're trying to build is a digital fabrication system, which include laser cutter and in future, maybe even metal 3D printer, that can be equipped to every single household. The question here is, I mean, the rationale is that in so doing, we allow people from home or anybody without any much experience can produce goods from their household. And we are not talking about simple craft or whatnot. We intend to build like to the point that you can build engine parts from your home. And I'm not talking about people with a garage. I'm talking about folks like in Singapore, when you can build components from your public houses or public apartment, which is very small. But easier said than done. The question here is that my vision of equality is go beyond just software. I'm trying to take it upon the entire hardware, if I can, the entire industrial ecosystem. That's kind of in a way to bring the cottage industrial back to the mainstream by empowering the household with tools that can build really high-end and high-tech products from their house. And obviously, all these will have been powered through an open source system, and it should not be controlled by the state or any corporation. So that was the kind of end game that Lions Forge is trying to do. So this concept was around. I developed this concept probably 3 years before I left my job, probably back in 2015, there around time. So that is where I kind of chanced upon open source. Then kind of I decided to take upon myself to kind of learn in that time about kind of a bit of hardware, a bit of coding and whatnot, but not a whole lot. So I'm not an engineer at all. And then see where I can move from there. And then bit by bit, I try to engage the community, and that is how I chanced upon a meeting with Force Asia. And then to realize that we all share the same ideology and values, and that's why we became good friends. And then I started to get myself involved with Force Asia. Yep. So I quite sure in this discussion, I'm not really a coder or developer, so I'll just say that I kind of like just a guy who had barely 2 years of experience, 2 to 3 years of experience with the open source. But I'm doing my best and see what I can milk out of it to kind of make sure this social experiment works. So far so good.
Thank you, Kiwi. So I'm looking at the time here. We're actually running out of time shortly. I've been taking note of what people are saying. So I just want to repeat a few questions that I noted from the discussion. So I have something related to cultural differences, language barrier, access to the right resources, the government, political settings, support like big companies, restriction from government, and limited access to education from students and kids from remote areas. And yeah, so this is some of the and not so easy to onboard people like into free software or start to engage with different projects. It always require a lot of effort and explanations. Yeah, and then I also note down a few potential ideas for the solution. For instance, Raphael pointed out that like back-end infrastructure getting cheaper and cheaper is also a motivation for people to code in the open free software solution. And then Kiwi emphasize a point that we should empower people to build their own products, to build their own things. I know that we did not get everyone a chance to talk, but I'm looking now at Andreas and Mario. As we now discuss about production and how to empower people to do something, I know that Mario working on hardware project. Do you have anything to add in terms of solution space? And the same for Andreas. So we heard a couple of problems. If you want to say something quickly in and call for action, yeah. So we have about 2 minutes.
Okay, so my call for action is like we need more of these meetings that we have here. I see like even though I didn't say anything the entire meeting, everyone is just pointing out the same problems from their own perspective, right? We see in Hong Kong, you guys are doing like more and more peer-to-peer technologies, I would call it, right? And that's what we're working on here at Force Asia with Suzy AI, with Loglac search engines, and so on. I'm seeing that we need more production, and this production could be potentially local production. I know that this is a big topic of Kiwi, where everyone can just do something, and we need to do it independently of the large corporations. There's nothing wrong with earning money and doing business, but we see that like companies that we know, right, that Google, for example, supported us for many years, and we're grateful for that. But like in regards to what they earn and what they get from society, it's just very, very little, and it's too little to solve the problems of the world. So thank you very much for all this inspiration, and I hope we can follow up on this and collaborate more together. So that's my take on that.
Andreas, do you want to say something?
I don't think I have one sentence to save the world, but I think we should stick together and work together. And my point in this DebConf is that I think Corona is really hard for everybody, but we have a lot of chances, and we all would probably not have met that way. And I hope we will continue in this way somehow. That's all.
Okay, thank you very much. Anyone else would like to say final words?
We are out of time.
Okay, so we are out of time officially. Thank you very much, everyone. And see you next time. So we will document the note on the internet and share with everyone.